Thank you everybody for joining us today on our industry update webinar. We will have Zach and Lauren presenting to us, but John Longstreet is back and ready to introduce our two upcoming speakers. But just as a reminder, we are recording this. We'll be sending this out after the webinar is complete. Please use the chat feature for any questions at the end of the webinar, and make sure to keep yourself muted during the presentation. Just makes it easier for everybody to hear everything clearly. With that, I'm going to turn this over to you, John.
Thank you very much, Hope, and I am glad to be back here in Harrisburg and to welcome you to today's webinar. It looks like we have what Heidi would describe as a small but mighty participant group today. So thank you for being here. And I also would like to remind you that the information that we're going to present today is for the benefit of our restaurant, hotel, travel and tourism partners and other friends of PRLA. It is off the record, not intended for press purposes. We're always happy to entertain any and all press inquiries, but not relative to this call today. So with that, again, I thank you for being here, and I'm very pleased and proud to introduce the fabulous PRLA Government Affairs team, Lauren Brinjac and Zak Pyzik. So I'll turn it over to the two of you.
Yeah, thanks, John. I'm going to kick things off today, starting with a federal update. On the federal front, one of the biggest things that has just recently come out of Congress is after months of negotiation, Congress last week passed their omnibus spending package for fiscal year 2022. That's more than 5 months after the fiscal year began, I'll note. And that will fund the government through September 30th. This was a $1.5 trillion bill that included $13.6 billion to support Ukraine. Something that did not make it into the final version of the package was additional money for the Restaurant Revitalization Fund. Replenishing the RRF via the omnibus package was the best and realistically the only hope of getting additional funding for that program. And so now, unfortunately, that door has been closed. I will note that there has been one sort of last-ditch effort in the U.S. House, a letter which was initiated by Congressman Blumenauer from Oregon and Congressman Brian Fitzpatrick from our Pennsylvania delegation, was sent to Speaker Pelosi and Leader Kevin McCarthy last Friday. And in this letter, they urged them to add RRF funding to any upcoming supplemental legislation addressing the COVID pandemic that might be considered by the House. Here at PRLA, we contacted the entire Pennsylvania congressional delegation and urged them to sign on to the letter. In addition to Congressman Fitzpatrick, we had Reps Dean, Doyle, Evans, Houlihan, Lamb, and Scanlon sign on to that letter. Unfortunately, this is unlikely to have much of an effect. The fact is that House Democrats had to remove billions of dollars in COVID funding from the omnibus package I just mentioned in order to pass that package. So the idea that a separate COVID package with the same price tag, including additional billions in RRF funding, really is likely just a no-go. The White House recently also shot down the idea of any additional COVID business relief. All that said, as long as there is a COVID health package on the table being debated, RRF will be part of that conversation, and we'll continue to push that, and we'll keep you in the loop on any future developments on that front. And now I will give it over to Zach to talk about a couple other federal items we're looking at.
Thank you, Lauren. Appreciate that. And good morning, everyone. Happy Webinar Wednesday. Happy spring. As many of you know, they did pass a substantial infrastructure package a couple of months ago on the federal level. Pennsylvania is starting to see its share of that $1.2 trillion deal. The Commonwealth is set to receive nearly $18 billion total for infrastructure improvements and upgrades. Similarly, the federal spending bill included nearly $82 million for more than 60 community projects across Pennsylvania, ranging from healthcare projects to community revitalization to workforce development. The Economic Development Association will be tasked with providing and appropriating that funding for projects that support communities going through significant economic change. The Minority Business Development Agency will also be responsible for appropriating money specifically to minority-owned businesses. And there's also been funding earmarked specifically for rural business programs. So we're seeing business and industry loans are set to see their largest increases in years. Also, a lot of funding going towards registered apprenticeship programs that will provide college training grants for in-demand jobs and career and technical education programs. $70 million coming out of the infrastructure package worth of funding going to airports here in Pennsylvania. You've got about $4.5 million going to Harrisburg International. You've got nearly $4 million going to Allentown, $11 million to Pittsburgh, $2 million for State College, and close to $30 million going to Philadelphia, $2.5 million for Wilkes-Barre, Scranton. So lots of money earmarked for airports, also for rail extensions and rail improvement projects as well. Bucks, Chester, Montgomery County are attempting to form their own new rail authority that would be similar to SEPTA. It would be called something like the Schuylkill River Rail Authority and would be tasked with improvements specifically on that line from Philly to Reading to Harrisburg through the Pottstown area. PRLA will continue to monitor that as more updates come in on how that infrastructure money will be spent and appropriated. In terms of these visas, the visa programs, they're a big topic right now of discussion across the industry. We know that the labor crisis is a multi-tiered problem, but this would allow us to try and make progress with helping operators at least somewhat deal with that workforce shortage. Along with our national partners, we've been working hard on drafting the Essential Worker for Economic Advancement Act, and we've been encouraging moving towards a program that would be more advantageous for restaurants and partners in the travel and tourism spaces. They will create a market-driven, non-immigrant visa program that would be targeted specifically to workers and occupations that typically do not require a college degree to enhance the American workforce and help lift the economy. This particular legislation that's being discussed with the National Restaurant Association, which we're hoping would be introduced sometime by the end of the month, would fill that gap for those without a college degree with a new H-2C visa program. Specifically, this legislation would create a two-track system, which employers and potential non-immigrant essential workers would both be required to receive a permit to work in the U.S. The legislation would require that employer apply to the federal government for an approval to hire an H-2C worker and does not allow a worker to enter the United States until they've been affirmatively hired by that employer who had received that approval from the government already. So those employees are only ever allowed to work for an approved employer at the approved location in the job that they were specifically approved for. So you might be asking, how does the H-1B program compare to the H-2B program and the H-2C program? Well, when it comes to the H-2C and the H-2B programs, both have 65,000 participant caps. H-2C prohibits family members from joining H-2C workers in the United States. H-1B, however, would allow family members to join. Each provide for an initial duration of 3 years, but the H-1B can only be extended up to 3 years opposed to the H-2C, which would allow an extension up to 6 years. About 25% of the H-2C visas in the new program would be set aside for small businesses, specifically with a priority for industries that promote nationally recognized employee safety and health programs that hire workers under the work opportunity tax credits and are employers in highly labor-intensive industries that have, comparatively lower profit margins per employee industry-wide. So I know that many aren't particularly happy with some of the news and some of what happened with the omnibus spending package. However, it's worth noting that we did see some pro-hospitality policies within this bill. Congress recognized the need now more than ever for attracting foreign tourists to America by allotting $250 million in emergency funding for Brand USA, a vital public-private partnership organization whose mission is specifically to increase international visitation. So spending and market share to fuel the nation's economy, particularly again in the hospitality industry. Additionally, this bill includes language that would provide authority to the Secretary of Homeland Security and labor to increase the number of H-2B visas available in 2022, which many members we've talked to believe to be a necessary mechanism to provide some much needed relief on that front. Also worth noting the EB-5 program, which initially had lapsed in July of 2021. This program was reauthorized through September of 2027, providing protection from future expirations of that program. And then lastly, I want to discuss the J-1 summer work travel program visas. Many of our members have cited this program as an asset to supporting your workforce needs. And so the J-1s, they allow non-immigrants to participate in work and study-based visa programs and visitor programs versus, say, the H-2B visas, which allow non-citizens to fill non-agricultural jobs. So many of our national partners are working hard to bring the J-1 SWT program and processing numbers up to pre-pandemic levels. Lots still developing regarding visas, but we will keep you all posted as conversations advance on that front. And before we move into the state update, I did want to note something that's not included in the slide, but I thought it was important on this slide, but I thought it was important to mention. In fall of 2021, the Department of Labor had announced its intention to issue a notice of proposed rulemaking modifying it overtime exemptions. The proposed changes would increase the wage level to qualify for overtime pay, which is currently set around $35,568 annually, or around $680 per week. This is a significant rule change with respect to cost, difficulty in implementation, and obviously impact on the workforce. I know there are many organizations out there like the Amusement Park Association that have signed on to a coalition letter with more than 100 other organizations urging the Department of Labor to meet with the industry to gain input regarding the impact of such rules within the current economic environment. So we're expecting that the proposed updates would be released sometime in April. Again, this isn't something that we've included in the slides, but I saw the update last minute and wanted to flag it for you. So now moving on to the state update here, state of the legislature, technically no session this week in Harrisburg since we're in the middle of budget season with a budget deadline of June 30th. It's pretty much budget hearings, coding the calendar. The House is supposed to return to session next week. However, we are hearing rumors that they may cancel session or it may be non-voting. They are also in the last week of March as well. We've seen some new legislation introduced. We've seen various hearings on some new topics, but mostly all eyes on the budget. At this point, the new legislative maps are still causing some reshuffling in terms of who's running for office versus who's not running for re-election. We'll continue to make those announcements in the daily update. If you received the daily update, you've probably seen a lot of those recently. But then again, all eyes are on the budget right now. Lauren has been tracking a lot of the budget hearings happening. Lauren, what are you seeing?
Yeah, thanks, Zach. So like Zach just noted, this week actually wraps up, I think 5 or 6 weeks of budget related hearings by the House and Senate Appropriations Committees. So during this time, all of the various departments within the Wolf administration have come before the 2 appropriations committees to explain their budget-related requests for the upcoming fiscal year and to answer any questions from legislators. As Zach also mentioned, the legislature, the full legislature has not been in session during this time. The House and Senate will return to session. We're thinking sometime later this month. As Zach noted previously, it was scheduled that the House would return next week and the Senate the following week. We are hearing that this schedule may be adjusted a bit to allow for members to stay in their districts to gather the necessary signatures they need to get on the ballot for the May primary. State Senate candidates need to get 500 signatures and state House candidates need 300 signatures. But the problem is that they can't start collecting them until a court rules on the final district maps. And so to say legislators are getting a bit antsy about this would be an understatement, considering that the primary is coming up sooner rather than later. Another interesting thing that's happened during this time of budget-related hearings that we are tracking closely is that separately, the Senate Law and Justice Committee has held a series of informational meetings on the legalization of recreational marijuana. The committee chairman, who's our Republican Senator Mike Regan, is a supporter of legalization, and this is a priority of his, and he is the one who's initiated these hearings. The 3 hearings over the last month have focused on testimony. They had law enforcement officials come in to speak of their personal experiences. They had people come in to talk about best practices from other states that have already legalized recreational marijuana. And they also brought in some folks to talk about the current regulation of Pennsylvania's existing medical marijuana industry. We don't expect any marijuana legalization legislation to pass the legislature this year. It doesn't seem to us that Republican leadership has much of an appetite to really pursue this year, especially during an election year. But we think it is noteworthy that a Senate committee has devoted a significant amount of time to examining the issue already this year. It's something that PRLA definitely wants to have a stake in. We plan to be part of this conversation. And we did note that during these informational hearings, a number of senators expressed an interest in hearing from the wider business community. So I think that there's going to be a lot of outreach to associations like PRLA, and we definitely hope to be involved to make any legislation as good for our members as possible. One other item I want to note, in a bit of good news on the state legislative level, is that this past Friday, Senators Dan Laughlin and John Udacek introduced Senate Bill 1138, and this would make the legalization of cocktails to go permanent. We've been, as you probably know, very supportive of this proposal in the past, and we're very happy to see this conversation revived again this spring. We'll be working with the bill sponsors as well as the chair of the Senate Law and Justice Committee, where this bill was referred, to hopefully have this get some traction. We do know that a majority of all 4 caucuses in the legislature are really supportive of this proposal. So we're hoping this is something that we can see move this spring. Just to note, joining the Senators Laughlin and Udacek as co-sponsors on the bill are Senator Lisa Boscola, Senator Scott Martin, Senator Pat Stefano. And if you're interested in this legislation and your senator has not signed on to the bill, we definitely encourage you to contact them. Ask your senator to co-sponsor Senate Bill 1138. And if they're interested in any additional information, Zach and I are happy to talk to any legislator about that. And we'll certainly be working on that in the months ahead. I'd like to now to move on a bit to some of the things that we are working on at the local level. Right now in Pittsburgh City Council, legislation calling for a ban on most single-use plastic bags was reintroduced to City Council at the beginning of the year. This was something that was introduced last November by Councilwoman Erica Strasburger, but Council wanted additional time to address some stakeholder concerns. So that legislation was held and just reintroduced this year. If it's passed, the measure bans just about all single-use plastic bags and would implement a fee for paper bags. This is something that's quite similar to a measure that's already in place in Philadelphia. We have been vocal about our concerns that the effect that this is going to have on our operators who are relying heavily on takeout and delivery and who have come to do so, especially during the pandemic. We participated in a work group meeting hosted by Councilwoman Strasburger, and then we had our own just PRLA specific meeting with her last week to continue that conversation. I think she was receptive to our concerns during that meeting. We are hearing that the bill language is going to be amended in some fashion. Councilwoman just followed up with me earlier this week. And so we are waiting to see what that new language is going to look like and how we might need to further engage on that. And then finally in Pittsburgh, for some good news, you've probably already heard, Pittsburgh City Council last month unanimously approved a bill to make outdoor dining permanent. That bill was signed by Mayor Ed Gainey last month, and it will go into effect later this week, actually. We were strongly in support of this legislation. And next up, as far as this goes, the Department of Mobility and Infrastructure is going to be developing rules and regulations to implement this ordinance. I just heard earlier this morning, a little while ago, actually, that the department is about to finalize their draft guidelines. They do want PRLA to review and comment on those. So we should be receiving those possibly as early as later this week. And so we certainly will look at those and make sure that we stay involved in any comments that we may need to make to improve those for our members. Now I will turn it over to Zach, who also has some outdoor dining information to discuss as well.
Thank you, Lauren, and great work on the outdoor dining legislation in Pittsburgh. That's terrific news, and thank you to PRLA Western Chapter President Mike Mitchum for his leadership on that issue as well. To the other corner of the state here, I want to talk about outdoor dining in Philadelphia, and this is likely the reason I see Ben's sipping on an extra tall coffee this morning. That's probably the reason for the extra tall coffee. We've got a hearing regarding outdoor dining starting this afternoon. In February, as many of you might know, the Streets Department proposed regulations to Philadelphia's permanent streetery program. Since then, we've been collecting feedback from members on the regs, and Ben and I, along with Andrew Zielinski from DeChico Associates and Lauren, we've been working through many of those concerns to identify some of the top concerns that we want to go to the department with. About a week or so ago, Councilmember Dom requested that there be a hearing so that stakeholders can weigh in on the subject. PRLA has met with the Streets Department, and we've met with the Law Department various times on the subject. We feel very confident that we have a fairly solid temperature check on what they may or may not want to change about the regulations. Something that Ben and I realized that I want to address, and I see some Philadelphia operators on the call, we think that there's been some confusion on the words streeteries and permanent being used together. And the streetery program itself is now permanent, but it's important to keep in mind that a guiding principle for the program, again, the program is permanent, a guiding principle is to assure that these streeteries still maintain a temporary nature, a movable nature, and not something that become a permanent fixture or essentially an extension of their permanent building. And so a good amount of the regulations adhere to that guiding premise. And those are some of the items that we fear we likely will not be able to change. The administration is committed to assuring that these streeteries maintain that temporary nature. Nevertheless, we have consolidated a list of concerns from dozens of members and operators throughout the city who we've contacted and emailed. We took that list, we've crafted our public comments, and we've submitted those with the city in written form. We feel strongly that many of these items are items that can be changed. Just yesterday, we met with an army of restaurateurs who are planning to join us at the hearing on the subject at noon today. The hearing on the regulations, again, scheduled for noon today, just after the webinar. PRLA will be testifying along with dozens of other businesses and stakeholders in the city. If these regulations impact you, it's very important that you submit comment before the end of today's hearing. A few of the items that we hope to have addressed: inclement weather. We all know that Philly records hundreds, if not thousands, of storms per year. Right now, it's written that operators would have to remove their streetery for any inclement weather event. We're hoping that the administration will flesh that out and reconsider that terminology. The license fee, currently it's set at $2,200, and that's an annual fee. Many have reached out to us. They believe that $2,200 mark is quite excessive. And we believe it will box out certain operators from participating in the program. And so we plan on addressing that in our comments as well. As of now, it's required that restaurants secure a $60,000 security bond to assure the city is covered in the event that a restaurant abandons their streetery. We know that's not how much it costs to remove the average streetery, though. Based off of our research, that number is probably closer to $10,000. We think the city might change their minds on this as well. And we're also asking for them to allow electrical and use of other utilities. But this unfortunately seems like it might be a non-starter for the department. And then lastly, the Art Commission. It is required by the Philadelphia Home Charter that the Art Commission review and approve designs. It's required again by that charter that they be involved in this process. But we have asked the city to provide some transparency on what that process would look like, and perhaps even pre-approve certain structure ideas, certain design ideas, to save on having to hire architects and engineers, all that might end in denial, right? And so there's still a lot TBD on the subject. The hearing starts just after the webinar, and so we should have a substantial update by time we have our next webinar on April 6th. And I imagine that's not Ben's last coffee for the morning. So also in Philadelphia, COVID-19 sick leave policy. Just recently, council voted 12-4 to pass Councilmember Brooks's renewal of the city's COVID-19 sick leave policy. I want to just say big thank you to Council Members Dom, Council Members Green, O, and O'Neill. They stood by PRLA throughout this discussion. They stood by the diverse chambers of Philadelphia and so many other small business partners who asked council for more time for some additional changes to the legislation. I just want to say we appreciate those council members standing with us. Nevertheless, the bill did pass. Employers with 25 or more employees will be required to provide at least 40 hours of paid sick leave for COVID-19 related illnesses. The bill, it was initially filed at 10 employees or more, but PRLA worked hard to assure that the smallest of businesses would not be impacted by this as they try to recover post-pandemic. And we can't forget, just a month ago, they were requiring masks still and vaccine mandates in Philadelphia. And so there's been an additional layer of mitigation there. And some of these smallest of businesses need time to recover, just like the entire business community does. But, again, they did lift that threshold upon that request. And so they moved the threshold from 10 to 25. Unfortunately, they were not willing to make any other changes to that legislation. And so Mayor Kenny signed that bill. And I've been told that it is effective immediately. Feel free to reach out to Ben, Lauren, or I with any questions or concerns on that legislation. And so next up, I want to just kind of provide you all with some FYIs. First up is the 2022 PRLA Legislator Roundtable have kicked off for the year. PRLA hosted our first 2022 Leg Roundtable in early March with members of the Western chapter. We had a very productive conversation, and we are happy to report that about 10 legislative offices, representatives and senators had attended that event. Thank you to all the members who were able to participate as well. While there, we highlighted our legislative priorities for 2022, and we discussed the state of the industry. We talked about the unpredictability most operators have seen the last 20 months. We've talked about the worker shortage, the rising costs on raw materials, the constant issues and struggles related to the supply chain. And it was a great conversation, and it led to some really productive conversation, especially afterwards too, where, we typically will have an hour-long discussion to kick these events off, and then an hour-long reception. And so again, thank you to all the legislators and to the members who were able to attend that event. The next roundtable is scheduled for March 31st in New Hope, Pennsylvania, and that's our Bucksmont chapter legislative roundtable. So we hope to see many of you there. The PA tourism study. So an update to the PA tourism study. Two of our biggest tourism priorities for 2022 involve the appropriations of state dollars. We are asking for $20 million for state tourism funding in the state budget, and we're asking for $15 million for destination marketing organizations in House Bill 554, which would create a grant program for our DMO partners. We recently discussed at the policy retreat honing in on a more precise dollar amount for those asks. And so there's been a lot that has changed in the tourism economy due to the pandemic, and we want to start getting at that research, that data. Because of those changes, we'd like to update that study that we first commissioned in 2015. That study, which was conducted by Adam Sachs at Oxford Economics, showed that there is a 3-to-1 return on investment for every dollar spent on tourism promotion. And that's just in tax revenue. The PRLA board voted unanimously to move forward with an update to that study. And so we are moving forward with that project. We are excited to see the results and the new research, the new data, specifically what have we seen regarding some of the states that have made significant investments in tourism, specifically throughout the pandemic. States like Arizona, who invested $100 million in the Visit Arizona initiative. States like Michigan, who are again spending $29-30 million on marketing to attract tourists. And so it'd be interesting to see what all that data looks like, especially hopefully as we move more into this post-pandemic economy. We're expecting to receive a completed study by Adam Sachs by May 1st. That will give us about 45 to 60 days to use this study and the updated version of the study to advocate for our tourism priorities this budget cycle. And hopefully we can secure some of this much needed funding in the budget. And if it doesn't happen this year, it's something we'll be able to use in an ongoing fashion. And moving forward, it'll be something that we continue to use as a tool to help our advocacy efforts. And I want to thank so many of the destination marketing organizations out there and other tourism partners that have helped sponsor this project. I'm so excited and inspired to see the commitment to our efforts on this front. And I'm very excited to see the results of the study. So thank you to all those who have decided to sponsor this project. We plan to take the new material to the Hill and use it for our advocacy efforts. And so I guess speaking of advocacy, with that, I can turn it back over to Lauren to discuss the National Restaurant Association's Public Affairs Conference.
Thanks, Zach. Yes, I would like to mention the upcoming 2022 Public Affairs Conference in Washington, D.C. and encourage all of you who are interested to register to attend with us. We really need to keep up our outreach to Congress in order to shape any future federal legislation that affects our industry, and we know more of that is coming down the line. This conference takes place April 25th through the 27th at the Grand Hyatt in Washington, D.C. We are in the process right now of scheduling meetings for our group to meet with the Pennsylvania congressional delegation, all of our representatives and senators, to discuss some of the most timely issues affecting our industry. If you are interested in more information, you can register on the NRA's website or email me, and I'm happy to provide you with any additional in-depth information as needed. The NRA right now is working to finalize their speaker lineup for the event, so hopefully we'll be able to report on that in the near future. And finally, the last thing I wanted to mention is our DMO retreat and our advocacy boot camp. We are hosting an advocacy boot camp on the afternoon of March 28th at the Graduate Hotel and State College. And this is for anyone who would like to learn how to interact with their elected officials better regarding industry issues. This is going to be held in conjunction with our DMO retreat, which is taking place the next day, March 29th. You can visit the events section of our website for more information. And I see Heidi's already put the link in the chat. We think this is going to be a great event. Zach and I are excited about it. Zach, do you have anything you'd like to add on what they can expect during the boot camp portion?
Yeah, sure, Lauren. Yeah, we're very excited for this event, and we'll be talking a lot about the legislative process, the committee process, how a bill goes from just an idea to being discussed and ultimately introduced, and then how it works its way through both chambers in the Pennsylvania General Assembly. And we'll also probably be getting into some discussion about the regulatory process and other ways to influence and impact government action. And so Lauren and I are really looking forward to this event. We're hoping to involve some guest speakers as well, and I know John Longstreet, our president and CEO, will be in attendance as well, and we're all very excited to see many of you. And I guess just to kind of wrap things up on a lighter note, I also want to say happy March Madness season to all those like me who love winning or sometimes losing every bracket challenge that they enter. Many of you know the March Madness season officially kicks off tomorrow, and so make sure you get your brackets in. And I'd love to talk about March Madness primarily since Michigan made the tournament again this year, and I was nervous for a while. They were definitely on the bubble and it was close, but there's a much more topical reason to talk about the tournament as it relates to this webinar, and that's tourism. It's very exciting to hear that there will be a few first and second round games played right here in Pennsylvania, in Pittsburgh, and then we also have some regional games that will be played right here in Philadelphia. And so we're excited to see our two major cities getting involved in the March Madness tournament this year. If you're a fan of the tournament, I've got to tell you, it is such a great experience to attend the games. And so if you get the chance, I'd encourage you to consider visiting Philly or visiting Pittsburgh this March Madness season. And on that note, Lauren, I think we've covered everything we meant to cover, and I can turn it back over to you, Hope, and we can check the chat for some questions.
Sounds great. Thanks, Zach. Thanks, Lauren. Well, they've already covered the DMO boot camp and the roundtable pretty well, but I'll just hit on the different chapter meetings that are going on. We are out of the installation season and now into our regional meetings that will be going on. A lot of them have been via Zoom. We do have a really great one going on right now about hiring. So please check this out. You can join any of the chapter Zoom meetings. If you missed your local one, please, feel free to get onto the Lancaster one or the Keystone one or any of them coming up. We do have a save the dates down there for the upcoming April dates. And we will be back on April 6th for the industry update. We'll be skipping the third Wednesday of this month and coming back in April for April 6th. Joining us that day will be the Secretary of Drug and Alcohol Programs, Jennifer Smith. She'll be talking about their programs, promoting their resources, and talking to you a little bit about how you and your employees can access that. So please take a moment to join us on that day, along with Zach and Lauren. And then also to talk to you about ServSafe. I know actually to go back to the ServSafe Ops part, to go back to the chapter meetings, I know Jenna has been joining the different meetings. So if you want to learn more about ServSafe Ops, we did introduce this back in 2021 and we're back in 2022 to keep talking about this program. We think it's definitely something that's beneficial for you to check out. And we will be having some information. There's more information available on our website. We do have regular scheduled classes with ServSafe, so please go to our calendar to see about your region and see about getting signed up for classes. Please remember you do need to be up to date. The inspectors will be looking for this, so make sure that someone in your establishment is certified. Scholarships are open. Scholarships are being accepted until April 1st. Please promote this out to your, the high school seniors, individuals that are working in your organization, or college grads that are pursuing additional education. We will be awarding $2,000 per region and additional amounts where we can with generous donations through our Richard Kubach Scholarship Fund and Mike Barrett Scholarship Fund. So please make sure to let your students know about this. And with that, I'm going to turn this over to you, Zach and Lauren. I do see there's some things in the chat, but I think some of it might have been answered also.
Yeah, I'm looking in here now. Thank you, Ben, for adding the link to today's hearing. There is still time to register for this, and they are accepting written comments regarding the Philadelphia Streetery regs up until the end of this hearing, which we expect to end sometime mid-afternoon. So if you've got input there, we definitely encourage you to share it. I see Heidi included the links for the Bucksmont Roundtable, but also the Keystone Chapter Roundtable, April 21st. So hopefully folks will register. The Advocacy Boot Camp. Thank you for the kind words, Cynthia. We're very excited as well. And with that, I just want to, I'll thank everybody very much for tuning in today. It's always great to see you all. Wishing everybody the best this spring. Looking forward to all that we have going on in March and April. And with that, Lauren, I don't know if you have any other questions that came your way to cover, but happy to turn it back over to Hope and John.
Yep, no, nothing really from my end. Just remind anyone, if you have any questions or concerns about any legislation, Zach and I are always available and more than happy to talk to anyone about anything really. So feel free to reach out.
Thanks, both Zach and Lauren. You guys did a great job as usual. And Hope, thank you for moderating today. You're a great voice for PRLA. Appreciate everyone attending. It's good to see you all and have a great week.
Great. Thank you, everybody. Enjoy the warm weather.